All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and complex geopolitical dynamic. We're going to take an analytical look at exactly how China utilizes its international student bodies, scholarships, and cultural institutes to project a much broader global strategy. We'll be looking directly at the official directives, the funding mechanisms, and the real-world experiences of the students navigating this landscape. To really get what the sources are telling us today, we have to start with this crucial dichotomy. Academic literature often frames China's approach through two distinct lenses. On the left side, we have soft power. This is the attractive stuff, promoting language, funding research, and building a sense of community. But on the right, researchers are identifying a transition into sharp power. This is where that attraction reportedly gives way to manipulation, shaping foreign narratives, censoring sensitive discussions, and enforcing strict ideological control. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with soft power on campus, move to scholarships and loyalty pledges, dive into the social hubs versus watchdogs debate, examine the united front strategy, and wrap up with the global academic implications. Section 1. Soft power on campus. So right on the surface, we see the highly visible, practical benefits of groups like Confucius Institutes and Chinese Students and Scholars Associations, or CSSAs. According to the literature, these groups officially exist to foster international friendship and harmony. And look, if you're a young student landing in a totally foreign academic world, a CSSA is basically a critical lifeline. They're helping students find roommates, get acclimated to the local culture, and hosting festivals that showcase ancient Chinese civilization. But what's really wild here is the sheer scale of it all. A U.S. Commission report highlights that there are at least 142 CSSA chapters in the U.S. alone. They are absolutely everywhere across major campuses, stepping in to provide these essential social safety nets where local universities just might not have the targeted support for international students. Section 2. Scholarships and loyalty pledges. Now, that brings us to the financial engine driving all this, the China Scholarship Council, or CSC. Formed back in 1996 under China's Ministry of Education, this is a massive driver of global academic exchange. The CSC pumps out funding for Chinese citizens to study abroad while simultaneously bringing foreign scholars into China. We're talking about managing high-level postgraduate programs and elite track funding to link up with top-tier international institutions. But here is where we have to read the fine print, because the requirements for these scholarships go way beyond just getting good grades. According to a 2020 U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission report, recipients of certain CSC scholarships are strictly mandated to, quote, support the leadership of the Communist Party, love the motherland, and hold a correct worldview. So the funding is literally hardwired to political loyalty. And just to be clear, this isn't just bureaucratic fluff on paper. It is strictly enforced. European media reports have given us a stark look at how this plays out in the real world. In Sweden, journalists found that CSC-funded students actually had to sign loyalty pledges to the CCP and name guarantors, essentially co-signers back home who'd have to pay the money back if the student broke the pledge. Over in the UK, there were reports of Chinese PhD students at top universities having to undergo mandatory CCP ideological training before they even stepped foot in the country. Section 3. Social hubs or watchdogs. This brings us to a really fascinating dual nature outlined in the sources. On one hand, you have this undeniable social utility we just talked about. But on the flip side, researchers point to reports of these groups acting as extraterritorial networks, getting direct guidance from Chinese consulates. While they might downplay it on campus, official Chinese sources actually boast about CSSAs getting financial and logistical backing from embassies. This is where their role supposedly morphs into suppressing dissident speech and keeping a very close eye on student activists. The sources cite some genuinely alarming examples of this watchdog behavior. In the U.S., counterintelligence officials suspect some CSSA members of actively reporting on their peers to China's Ministry of State Security. There's also a stark example from Egypt in 2017. After local police rounded up over 200 Uyghur students at Beijing's request, detained students said the local CSSA president actually helped interrogate them. And organizations like Amnesty International report that students who join overseas protests, like the White Paper movement, often face heavy state surveillance, with their families back home in China facing harassment and intimidation. So what is driving all of this? It really boils down to this well-known Chinese propaganda directive: tell the China story well, spread China's voice well.
Chinese diplomats officially framed these overseas students not just as young people trying to get a degree, but as active, mobilized foot soldiers in a broader soft power strategy. They're tasked with aiding national rejuvenation, pushing the CCP's narrative, and shutting down opposition abroad.
Section 4. The United Front Strategy.
To understand the structural machinery behind all this, we need to talk about the United Front Work Department. This is a high-level party body reporting directly to the CCP's Central Committee. The strategy here is historically borrowed from the Soviet Union, and it's brutally pragmatic. Unit with lesser enemies to defeat greater ones, co-opt your potential opponents, and neutralize any real opposition. Overseas, that means leveraging ethnic, cultural, and economic ties to mobilize diaspora communities to advocate for Beijing. And under President Xi Jinping, since 2012, this strategy has been completely supercharged. He transparently calls United Front Work a magic weapon for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It's a strategy designed to tap into emotional and ideological sympathies to secure political, moral, and financial support for the CCP on a global scale, making it a massive pillar in China's increasingly assertive foreign policy. When you look at the bureaucratic reality, it's pretty eye-opening. According to this 2018 U.S. Commission report, the United Front Work Department is the umbrella actively directing the overseas activities of all these different entities. We're talking about everything from official military organizations right down to this cultural friendship associations, the Confucius Institutes, and yes, the CSSAs we've been analyzing. They're all structurally linked. You can actually trace this escalation directly on a timeline. After the events of 1989, the government really ramped up its ideological work, which led to the creation of CSSAs to project influence abroad. Fast forward to 2015, and President Xi explicitly designates overseas students as a primary focus for United Front activity. Then, climaxing in 2018, the party literally absorbed state agencies like the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office, completely consolidating its direct, top-down control over diaspora engagement.
Section 5. Global Academic Implications. So how is this playing out globally right now? Well, China is rapidly expanding its educational footprint. Take the 2022 to 2024 Joint Action Plan with Latin American and Caribbean states that was specifically aimed at expanding Confucius institutes and getting Mandarin integrated into national curricula. At the same time, you have initiatives like the Thousand Talents Plan, which throws massive financial incentives. We're talking huge signing bonuses and housing perks to lure elite tech and STEM talent back to Beijing, heavily utilizing those very same overseas professional networks. But as you might expect, this strategy is hitting some serious friction. Foreign governments and universities are increasingly citing national security risks. Back in 2020, the University of North Texas completely terminated its relationship with the China Scholarship Council. And by 2025, a U.S. House Select Committee was actively urging 7 major universities, including Dartmouth and Notre Dame, to cut ties with the program entirely. These moves are driven by profound concerns outlined in the sources that these state-sponsored mechanisms are subverting academic freedom and aggressively marginalizing dissidents who thought they were safe in free and open societies. Which leaves us with one incredibly difficult question to untangle. As international education becomes the front line of intense geopolitical talent competition, how exactly can free societies maintain the open, collaborative academic exchanges that drive global innovation while simultaneously protecting their campuses from state-sponsored surveillance and ideological manipulation? It is a massive balancing act, and one that universities and policymakers are going to be grappling with for years to come. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.